The decision to leave the bunker was not made lightly. It was a desperate move, born out of necessity rather than strategy. The Krylos had breached their defenses, and staying put meant certain death. Every member of the group understood this, even if the thought of venturing back into open territory filled them with dread. The bunker had been their sanctuary, however fragile it was. Now, they were being forced to abandon it. Daniel gathered everyone in the innermost chamber, where the air was thick with tension and exhaustion. Faces were streaked with dirt and sweat, eyes shadowed by sleepless nights. Some were injured, their bandages stained red. Despite the grim circumstances, there was a glimmer of resolve in their expressions. They had survived the initial attack, and that alone gave them a sliver of confidence. "We're moving out at first light," Daniel announced, his voice steady despite the weight of what he was asking them to do. "We can't stay here. The Krylos will be back, and next time, they'll bring more firepower." A murmur rippled through the group. Ethan raised his hand hesitantly. "Where are we going?" he asked. "Out there isn't exactly safe either." Daniel nodded, acknowledging the truth in Ethan's words. "We're heading for the old energy plant," he replied. "It's about 20 miles east of here. If we can disable it, we'll cut off power to one of their major shield networks. That'll weaken their orbital defenses and give the fleet a better chance when they arrive." Leela stepped forward, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. 20 miles is a long way," she said, her tone measured but firm, "especially with wounded people and limited supplies. And you know the Krylos will be watching every step we take." "I know," Daniel admitted, "but it's our best shot. If we can pull this off, we might actually make a difference. We can't just sit around waiting for the fleet to save us. We need to fight back." No one argued. They all knew the risks, but they also understood that doing nothing would lead to the same outcome as failure. At least this way, they had a purpose. One by one, they began preparing for the journey ahead, packing what little food and water they had left, gathering weapons, and tending to injuries as best they could. By dawn, the group was ready to move. The sky above them was overcast, the gray clouds casting a pale light over the ruins of the city. The air was cold, biting at exposed skin, but no one complained. They moved quickly and quietly, sticking to the shadows as much as possible, every sound a distant hum of machinery. The creak of metal shifting in the wind set their nerves on edge. Jake walked near the back of the group, his head down and his hands clutching the strap of his backpack. He hadn't spoken much since the attack on the bunker, and guilt still clung to him like a second skin. He wanted to prove himself, to show that he wasn't just a burden, but fear held him back. Each step felt heavier than the last, as if the ground itself was trying to keep him from moving forward. Lila noticed his struggle and slowed her pace until she was walking beside him. "You okay?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible, over the crunch of gravel beneath their feet. Jake shrugged, avoiding her gaze. "I don't know," he admitted. I feel like I'm dragging everyone down." "You've made mistakes," Leela said bluntly. "Big ones. But so has everyone here. What matters now is what you do next." Her words weren't comforting, exactly, but they carried a kind of honesty that Jake needed to hear. He nodded slowly, swallowing hard. "I'll try," he said. "I'll do better." "That's all anyone can ask for," Leela replied before, quickening her pace to catch up with Daniel at the front of the group. The journey to the energy plant was grueling. The terrain was rough, littered with debris and obstacles that forced them to take longer, more circuitous routes. Several times, they had to double back or change direction entirely to avoid Krylos patrols. The constant threat of discovery kept everyone on edge, their senses heightened to the point of exhaustion. On the third day, they reached the outskirts of an industrial zone. The energy plant loomed in the distance, its towering structures surrounded by a maze of fences and guard posts. Even from afar, they could see the glow of plasma cannons mounted along the perimeter. their blue lights pulsing ominously. "This is it," Daniel said, crouching behind a pile of rubble as he studied the layout through binoculars. "Looks like they've got heavy defenses, but most of the guards seem to be concentrated at the main gate. If we can find another way in, we'll need a distraction," Lila interjected. "Something to draw their attention away from the weak points." Ethan nodded in agreement. "Leave that to me," he said. "I'll create some noise near the front. Should buy you enough time to slip inside." Daniel hesitated, torn between gratitude and concern. "You're sure about this?" he asked. "It's dangerous." Ethan grinned, though it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Danger's kind of my thing these days," he quipped. "Besides, someone's gotta do it." With the plan set, the group split into 2 teams. Ethan and a few others stayed behind to prepare the distraction, while Daniel, Leela, Jake, and the rest moved toward a secondary entrance on the far side of the compound. The wait was agonizing, each passing minute stretching into eternity. Finally, the sound of explosions echoed in the distance, followed by the unmistakable whine of plasma fire. "That's our cue," Daniel whispered, signaling for the others to follow him. They moved swiftly, slipping through gaps in the fence and darting between buildings. The area was eerily quiet, the guards seemingly drawn away by the commotion at the main gate. Still, they remained cautious, knowing that even a single mistake could cost them everything. Reaching the control room took longer than expected. The corridors inside the plant were narrow and dimly lit, forcing them to navigate carefully to avoid triggering alarms. Along the way, they encountered a handful of Krylos soldiers, but Daniel and Lila managed to dispatch them quietly, using knives and silenced pistols to minimize noise. When they finally reached the control room, Jake froze in the doorway, staring at the array of blinking monitors and switches. "What do we do now?" he asked, his voice trembling. "Start shutting it down," Daniel instructed, pointing to a series of labeled panels. Lila covered the door. "Jake, you're with me. We'll handle the main console." Jake hesitated for a moment before nodding and stepping forward. His hands shook as he worked, but he focused intently, following Daniel's instructions to the letter. Slowly, the hum of machinery began to fade, replaced by the ominous silence of systems powering down. "It's working," Lila said from her position by the door. "Keep going." But their success came at a price. The sudden loss of power alerted the remaining Krylos forces, who converged on their location with alarming speed. Plasma bolts tore through the walls, forcing them to take cover behind overturned desks and shattered equipment. "We're not going to hold them off forever," Lila shouted, firing blindly into the corridor. "Just a little longer," Daniel yelled back, his fingers flying across the keyboard as he input the final commands. "Almost done." Jake huddled beside him, his face pale but determined. For the first time since joining the group, he felt useful, like he was contributing something meaningful. It wasn't much, but it was enough. Finally, with a loud crackle, the entire system went dark. The lights flickered and died, plunging the room into shadow. Outside, the glow of the shield network faded, leaving the sky above unobstructed. "We did it," Daniel breathed, leaning back against the wall. "Now let's get out of here." As they regrouped with Ethan and the others outside the plant, the reality of their accomplishment began to sink in. They had struck a significant blow against the Krylos, weakening their defenses and giving the approaching fleet a fighting chance. But the victory was bittersweet. Several members of their group had been lost during the mission, including Ethan, whose sacrifice had made the operation possible. Standing amidst the wreckage, Daniel looked at the faces of those who remained. They were tired, battered, and grieving, but they were still standing. Against all odds, they had fought back and won. "1 week," he said, his voice firm, despite the ache in his chest. "1 more week, and help will be here. Let's make sure we're ready." As they prepared to move again, the horizon seemed a little brighter, the stars a little closer. Somewhere beyond the darkness, ships were flying toward them, carrying the promise of salvation. All they had to do was hold on. The room was silent, except for the faint hum of machinery. Captain Ryan Hayes sat at the head of a long, polished table in the underground command center. The walls were lined with screens displaying maps of star systems and streams of data scrolling endlessly. Around him, officers exchanged tense glances, their faces pale under the cold fluorescent lights. Something big was coming, and everyone could feel it. Admiral Cole entered the room, his boots clicking sharply against the floor. He carried a datapad, its glow reflecting off his stern expression. Without wasting time on pleasantries, he placed it on the table and tapped the screen. An image appeared, a sleek, insect-like alien ship hovering over a barren planet. Its design was unmistakably Zorathian. "They've made their move," Admiral Cole said, his voice low but firm. "The Zorothians have issued a formal declaration to the Galactic Council. They claim Earth has been ... holding back, that we're hiding our true potential and refusing to contribute to galactic progress." Ryan leaned forward, his brow furrowing. "Holding back? What does that even mean?" "It means they think we're weak," Lieutenant Emma Foster interjected. She stood near the wall, her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Her sharp green eyes scanned the room as if daring anyone to challenge her. "They've always looked down on us, treated us like some primitive species, barely worth noticing. This is just another excuse to push us around." Admiral Cole nodded. "Exactly. And now they're demanding inspections of our colonies, research facilities, and military bases. If we refuse, they'll impose sanctions, and possibly worse." The room fell silent again. Everyone knew what worse meant. The Zorathians weren't known for patience or mercy. Their empire spanned dozens of star systems, and they enforced their will through sheer force. Humanity had managed to avoid direct conflict so far, but this felt different. This felt personal. Ryan rubbed his temples, trying to process the situation. For decades, humanity had played it safe, keeping its most advanced technologies hidden from prying eyes. Projects like quantum reactors, self-replicating drones, and AI-driven weapon systems were locked away in classified labs. It wasn't paranoia, it was survival, out here in the vastness of space. Showing your cards too early could get you wiped out. But now, the Zorathians were calling humanity's bluff. They wanted proof of Earth's supposed weakness or strength. Either way, humanity couldn't stay silent forever. "What are our options?" Ryan asked, finally, looking up at Admiral Cole. "We prepare," Cole replied. "We let them see just enough to make them think twice about messing with us. But not everything. Not yet." Emma stepped closer to the table, her tone sharp. "Sir, if we show anything, they'll see it as a threat. You know how they operate. They won't stop until they've crushed whatever stands in their way. And if we don't show anything," Ryan countered, "they'll assume we're hiding something dangerous. Then they'll come after us anyway." Cole sighed heavily. "Which is why we need to strike a balance. Show them we're not afraid, but don't give them a reason to escalate. Captain Hayes, you'll lead a diplomatic mission to meet with the Zorathians' advanced fleet. Take the Aegis. Make it clear we're ready to defend ourselves, but leave room for negotiation." Ryan nodded, though doubt lingered in his mind. Negotiation sounded good in theory, but dealing with the Zorothians was like dancing on the edge of a knife. One wrong step, and it would all fall apart. As the meeting ended, Ryan walked alongside Emma toward the exit. "What do you think?" he asked quietly. "I think we're walking into a trap," she admitted. "But we don't have a choice. If we back down now, we lose everything." Ryan glanced at her, seeing the determination in her eyes. He felt the same resolve burning inside him. Whatever happened next, humanity wouldn't go down without a fight. Outside, the sky was dark, dotted with stars that seemed impossibly distant. Somewhere out there, the Zorathians were waiting, and soon, they'd learn just how wrong they'd been to underestimate Earth. The Aegis drifted silently through the void of space, its sleek hull reflecting the faint light of distant stars. Inside, Captain Ryan Hayes sat in his quarters, staring at the blinking notifications on his personal terminal. The weight of Admiral Cole's orders pressed heavily on his shoulders. He had been given command of one of humanity's most advanced starships, but this mission wasn't about exploration or discovery, it was about survival. Ryan leaned back in his chair inside. His thoughts wandered to the classified files he'd reviewed earlier that day. Humanity had always played it safe, hiding its greatest achievements from the rest of the galaxy. But now, with the Zorathians breathing down their necks, those secrets might be the only thing standing between Earth and annihilation. He opened the first Phila report on Project Eclipse, an experimental weapon capable of creating artificial black holes. The sheer destructive power of the device was staggering, but it came with a price. Once activated, there would be no turning back. Entire fleets could be wiped out in seconds, along with any nearby planets unlucky enough to get caught in the blast radius. Ryan shuddered at the thought. Was humanity ready to wield such a weapon? Or would using it make them no better than the Zorathians? Next, he reviewed details about Operation Black Dawn, the fleet of autonomous warships powered by self-learning AI. These vessels were faster, smarter, and more efficient than anything the Zorathians could field. They could operate independently, adapting to enemy tactics in real time, without needing direct human intervention. It sounded like something out of science fiction, but Ryan knew better. This wasn't speculation, it was reality, and soon, the galaxy would see it for themselves. As he closed the files, a soft knock came at the door. "Come in," Ryan called out. Lieutenant Emma Foster entered, her expression unreadable. She carried a datapad tucked under one arm and wore her usual uniform, neat, professional, but somehow still intimidating. Her sharp green eyes scanned the room before settling on Ryan. "Still awake, sir?" she asked, raising an eyebrow. "Couldn't sleep," Ryan admitted, gesturing for her to sit. "Too much on my mind." Emma nodded as she took a seat across from him. "Understandable. We're about to face the biggest test humanity's ever seen. If we screw this up, we don't have the luxury of failure," Ryan finished for her. "I know." For a moment, neither of them spoke. The silence stretched between them, broken only by the faint hum of the ship's engines. Finally, Emma broke the quiet. "I've been reviewing the crew rosters and tactical simulations. Everyone's prepared, but morale is shaky. People are scared, Ryan. Scared of what happens if we lose." Ryan rubbed his temples, feeling the tension building behind his eyes. "Fear isn't weakness, Emma. It's natural. What matters is how we channel it. Fear can paralyze us, or it can push us to do things we never thought possible." "I hope you're right," Emma said softly. "Because we're going to need every ounce of courage we can muster." The next morning, Ryan gathered the senior staff in the briefing room. The walls were lined with holographic displays showing maps of nearby star systems and schematics of Zorathian vessels. The mood was tense. Even the normally cheerful chief engineer, Jacob Miller, looked unusually somber. "All right, people," Ryan began, standing at the front of the room. "Here's the situation. The Zorathians are sending a fleet to intercept us near Proxima Centauri. Their leader, Commander Vrax, has made it clear they don't believe we're as weak as we've let on. Our job is to prove them wrong, but not too wrong. We need to show them we're capable of defending ourselves without starting an all-out war." "What exactly does that mean, sir?" asked Lieutenant Marcus Lane, the ship's navigator. His voice carried a hint of skepticism. "It means walking a fine line," Ryan explained. "We'll engage them if necessary, but our priority is deterrence, not destruction. That's where Operation Black Dawn comes in." At the mention of The operation. A murmur rippled through the room. Most of the crew had heard rumors about the AI-driven fleet, but few knew the full extent of its capabilities. Ryan activated one of the holographic displays, revealing a formation of sleek, silver ships equipped with cutting-edge weaponry. These vessels are unlike anything the Zorthians have faced before, Ryan continued. They're faster, smarter, and more adaptable. If things go south, they'll buy us time and maybe even turn the tide. But what about Project Eclipse? Emma asked, her tone cautious. If we deploy that, it won't just be a warning shot. It'll be a declaration of war. Ryan hesitated, knowing she was right. Project Eclipse is our last resort. If we reach that point, it means diplomacy has failed completely. Let's hope it doesn't come to that. Later that evening, Emma found herself alone in the observation deck, gazing out at the endless expanse of stars. The vastness of space always reminded her of how small humanity truly was, and yet, here they were, preparing to stand toe-to-toe with one of the most powerful civilizations in the galaxy. She heard footsteps behind her and turned to see Jacob Miller approaching. The engineer held 2 cups of coffee, offering one to her with a sheepish grin. "Thought you could use this," he said. "Thanks," Emma replied, accepting the cup. "What brings you here?" "Just needed some air," Jacob admitted, leaning against the railing beside her. "This whole thing, it's got me thinking about home, you know. My family's back on Earth. If things go sideways, I don't even want to imagine what might happen to them." Emma sipped her coffee, letting the warmth spread through her hands. "You're not the only one who feels that way. Half the crew probably has someone waiting for them back home. But that's why we're out here, to make sure they stay safe." Jacob nodded slowly. "Yeah, still doesn't make it any easier." "No," Emma agreed. "It doesn't." The following day, the Aegis reached the designated meeting point near Proxima Centauri. On the bridge, Ryan stood beside Emma as the main view screen flickered to life, displaying the massive silhouette of a Zorathian dreadnought. Its jagged design resembled a monstrous insect, with glowing red sensors scanning the area. "This is Captain Ryan Hayes of the Terran starship Aegis," Ryan announced, his voice steady despite the knot of anxiety in his stomach. "We request peaceful dialogue." The response came quickly, delivered in a cold, mechanical tone. "I am Commander Vrax of the Zorathian hegemony. Your presence here is an affront to galactic order. Surrender your vessel for inspection, or face the consequences." Ryan exchanged a glance with Emma, who gave a subtle nod. Turning back to the screen, he replied, "We will not surrender. Humanity stands ready to defend itself and to demonstrate that we are not the weaklings you believe us to be." Vrax's reply was immediate and chilling. "Then prepare yourselves, humans. You have chosen extinction." As the transmission ended, alarms blared throughout the ship. The Zorathian fleet moved into position, surrounding the Aegis. Ryan clenched his fists, his mind racing. This was the moment of truth. "Activate Operation Black Dawn," he ordered, his voice cutting through the chaos. "Let's show them what we're made of." On the view screen, dozens of sleek AI-driven vessels emerged from hyperspace, forming a protective barrier around the Aegis. For a brief moment, the Zorathians hesitated, clearly unprepared for the sudden appearance of such advanced technology. Emma allowed herself a small smile. "Looks like they didn't expect this." Ryan didn't respond. His eyes remained fixed on the screen, watching as the first shots were fired. The battle had begun and humanity's fate hung in the balance. The battle began with a deafening roar of energy weapons firing across the void. The Zorathian fleet, caught off guard by the sudden appearance of Operation Black Dawn's AI-driven vessels, scrambled to reorganize their formation. Bright streaks of plasma and laser fire crisscrossed the blackness of space, lighting up the darkness like fireworks in the night sky. On the bridge of the Aegis, Captain Ryan Hayes gripped the railing tightly as the ship shuddered from the impact of an incoming blast. Alarms blared, red lights flashing across the control panels. The crew worked frantically, their hands moving over consoles with practiced precision. Lieutenant Emma Foster stood beside Ryan, her eyes glued to the main view screen, where the chaotic dance of ships unfolded. "They're targeting the AI fleet first," Emma said, her voice calm but urgent, "trying to disable our advantage." Ryan nodded, his jaw clenched. "Tell the drones to prioritize defensive maneuvers. We can't afford to lose them this early." Emma relayed the order, and within moments, the sleek silver ships of operation Black Dawn darted through space with incredible speed and agility. They weaved between enemy fire, their movements almost too fast for the human eye to follow. One by one, they unleashed bursts of counterattacks, disabling several Zorothian cruisers with surgical precision. Despite their initial shock, the Zorothians quickly adapted. Their larger ships began forming a tight cluster, creating a wall of shields that absorbed most of the incoming fire. Smaller fighter craft swarmed around the edges, attempting to flank the AI vessels. "Damn it," Ryan muttered under his breath. "They're regrouping faster than expected." Emma glanced at him, her expression grim. "We knew they wouldn't stay disorganized for long. What's the plan?" Ryan hesitated, his mind racing. The Zorothians were more disciplined than anticipated, and their numbers gave them a significant edge. Even with the AI fleet, the odds were still stacked against them. He needed to think of something fast. "Divide and conquer," he said finally, turning to the tactical officer. "Order the drones to split into two groups. One will keep hammering their center, while the other flanks them from behind. It'll force them to spread out their defenses." The tactical officer nodded, relaying the command. On the view screen, the AI ships divided seamlessly, executing the maneuver with flawless coordination. As predicted, the Zorathians shifted their focus, spreading their forces thin to cover both threats. The strain on their shield systems became apparent as gaps started to appear. "They're falling for it," Emma said, a hint of satisfaction in her voice. "Keep pushing." But the victory wasn't without cost. Several AI vessels were destroyed in the process, their wreckage drifting lifelessly through space. Each loss sent a pang of guilt through Ryan, knowing how much effort and resources had gone into building those ships. But there was no time to dwell on it. The fight was far from over. Meanwhile, deep within the belly of the Aegis, Chief Engineer Jacob Miller worked tirelessly to keep the ship running smoothly. The engineering bay was a cacophony of noise, the hum of machinery, the hiss of coolant systems, and the occasional shout of instructions. Sweat dripped down Jacob's face as he adjusted power levels to compensate for damage sustained during the battle. "How's it looking?" asked Ensign Laura Bennett, one of the junior engineers. Her hands trembled slightly as she tightened a bolt on a damaged conduit. "We're holding together for now," Jacob replied, wiping his brow with the back of his hand. "But if we take another hit like that last one, we're screwed." Laura nodded nervously, glancing toward the ceiling as another explosion rocked the ship. "Do you think we'll make it?" Jacob forced a smile, though it didn't reach his eyes. "We don't have a choice. If we go down, so does everyone else." Back on the bridge, the situation grew increasingly dire. The Zorothians launched a new wave of fighters, their smaller crafts zipping past the AI fleet and heading straight for the Aegis. The ship's point-bent turrets struggled to keep up, their automated systems overwhelmed by the sheer number of targets. "Shields are down to 40%, shouted the operations officer, her voice tinged with panic. Ryan gritted his teeth, his mind racing for solutions. "Redirect auxiliary power to the shield generators. And someone get me a status report on the AI fleet." Before anyone could respond, a massive explosion lit up the view screen. One of the Zorathian dreadnoughts had been struck by a concentrated barrage from the AI ships, its hull rupturing in a brilliant burst of flames. Cheers erupted among the crew, but Ryan silenced them with a raised hand. "Don't celebrate yet," he warned. "We're not out of this." Emma leaned closer to him, lowering her voice. "Sir, we're taking heavy damage. If we don't retreat soon, we won't survive." Ryan shook his head firmly. "Retreating isn't an option. If we run now, the Zorthians will chase us all the way back to Earth. No, we hold our ground or die trying." Emma opened her mouth to argue, but stopped herself. She knew he was right. Retreating would only delay the inevitable. Instead, she focused on coordinating the remaining AI vessels, ensuring they maintained pressure on the enemy. As the battle raged on, a strange pattern began to emerge. The Zorothians seemed hesitant to fully commit their forces, as if they were waiting for something or someone. Ryan noticed this too, his suspicions growing with each passing minute. "What are they playing at?" he muttered aloud. Emma frowned, studying the tactical readouts. Could they be expecting reinforcements? "It's possible," Ryan admitted. "But reinforcements from where? There aren't any nearby systems they could call upon." Before they could speculate further, the sensors officer interrupted. "Captain, detecting multiple hyperspace signatures approaching from Sector 7. Ryan's heart sank. "How many?" "At least 20 additional ships," the officer replied, his voice trembling. "And they're big." Emma cursed under her breath. "This is bad. Really bad." Ryan clenched his fists, his mind working furiously. With the arrival of reinforcements, the balance of power had shifted dramatically. The Aegis and its AI fleet were outnumbered and outgunned. Unless they came up with a miracle, they were finished. "Activate Project Eclipse," Ryan ordered suddenly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade. The entire bridge fell silent. Everyone turned to look at him, their faces pale with shock. "Are you sure about this, sir?" Emma asked cautiously. "Once we deploy that, there's no going back." "I know," Ryan said, his tone resolute. "But we're out of options. If we don't act now, we'll lose everything." Emma hesitated, then nodded. "Understood." Preparing Project Eclipse for deployment. As the countdown began, Ryan felt a mixture of dread and determination. This was humanity's darkest hour, but also its moment of truth. The galaxy would see what Earth was truly capable of. On the view screen, the Zorthian fleet continued its relentless assault, unaware of the storm about to break upon them. The countdown to Project Eclipse's activation began, its red digits flashing ominously on the main view screen of the Aegis. The crew moved with frantic urgency, their faces pale but determined. Lieutenant Emma Foster stood beside Captain Ryan Hayes, her hands gripping the railing as she watched the numbers tick down. 30 seconds until deployment, announced the operations officer, her voice steady, despite the tension in the air. Ryan didn't take his eyes off the screen. His mind raced with thoughts of what was about to happen. Project Eclipse wasn't just a weapon, it was a statement, a declaration that humanity had been holding back far more than anyone could have imagined. But at what cost? Once activated, there would be no turning back. Lives would be lost, and the galaxy would never look at Earth the same way again. "Are we sure this is the only way?" Emma asked quietly, leaning closer to Ryan so only he could hear. Ryan glanced at her, his expression grim. "Do you see another option?" Emma hesitated, then shook her head. "No, but I can't help thinking. After this, there's no going back to peace talks. We're crossing a line." "We already crossed it when they attacked us," Ryan replied firmly. "This isn't about revenge, it's about survival. If we don't stop them now, Earth will pay the price." Emma nodded slowly, though her jaw remained tight. She turned back to the view screen, where the AI fleet continued to fight valiantly against the overwhelming Zorthian forces. The sleek silver ships darted through space, their movements precise and efficient, but even they couldn't hold out forever. More drones were being destroyed with each passing second, their wreckage floating lifelessly among the stars. In the engineering bay, Chief Engineer Jacob Miller worked furiously to stabilize the ship's power systems. The Aegis was taking heavy damage, and every blast from the enemy fleet pushed the vessel closer to collapse. Sparks flew from damaged consoles, and the smell of burning metal filled the air. Jacob wiped sweat from his brow, shouting orders to his team. Divert auxiliary power to the shields. He barked, his voice cutting through the chaos. We need to buy the bridge more time. Ensign, Laura Bennett scrambled to reroute energy, her hands trembling as she typed commands into her console. Shields are holding at 25%, sir, but not for long. Jacob clenched his teeth, glancing up at the ceiling as another explosion rocked the ship. He knew they were running out of options. Without the shields, the Aegis would be torn apart within minutes. Keep working, he said, forcing confidence into his voice. We're not done yet. Back on the bridge, the countdown reached 10 seconds. The entire crew held their breath, watching as the numbers ticked away. On the view screen, the Zorathian fleet loomed larger than ever, their ships closing in on the Aegis. Commander Vrax's voice crackled over the comms, cold and menacing. You've made your choice, humans, Vrax sneered. Now face the consequences. Ryan ignored him, focusing instead on the final moments before Eclipse's activation. 5 seconds. 4, 3, 2, 1. The ship shuddered violently as Project Eclipse deployed. A small pod ejected from the Aegis, speeding toward the heart of the Zorathian fleet. For a brief moment, nothing happened. Then, a blinding flash of light erupted in the distance, followed by an immense gravitational pull that distorted the fabric of space itself. What? What is that? Gasped the sensors officer, staring wide-eyed at the readings. It's working, Emma whispered, her voice tinged with awe and horror. The black hole, it's forming. On the view screen, the Zorathian ships were sucked into the swirling vortex, their attempts to escape futile against the crushing force of the artificial singularity. Larger vessels crumbled under the immense pressure, while smaller fighters were obliterated instantly. The once mighty fleet was reduced to debris in a matter of seconds, but the destruction didn't stop there. Nearby asteroids and chunks of planetary matter were also pulled into the black hole, creating a massive chain reaction. The crew of the Aegis watched in stunned silence as the battlefield transformed into a chaotic maelstrom of light and shadow. Project Eclipse has succeeded, the operations officer reported, her voice barely above a whisper. The Zorathian fleet. It's gone. Ryan let out a slow breath, his body sagging with relief. They had done it. Against all odds, humanity had turned the tide of the battle. But the victory felt hollow. Too many lives had been lost, both human and alien, to achieve this outcome. As the black hole stabilized and began to shrink, the crew of the Aegis worked to assess the damage. The ship's shields were nearly depleted, and several critical systems were offline. In the engineering bay, Jacob and his team scrambled to repair the worst of the damage, knowing they couldn't afford any further delays. How bad is it? Ryan asked as he entered the bay, his boots clanging against the metal floor. Jacob looked up, his face streaked with grease and sweat. Bad enough. Shields are offline, propulsion is at 50%, and half the weapon systems are fried. We're lucky to still be in one piece. Ryan nodded grimly. Get us operational as fast as you can. We need to get back to Earth and report what happened here. Yes, sir, Jacob replied, turning back to his work without hesitation. Meanwhile, on the bridge, Emma stared at the view screen, her mind replaying the events of the past hour. She couldn't shake the image of the black hole devouring the Zorathian fleet. It had been necessary, she told herself. But was it justified? How many innocent beings had been caught in the crossfire? Lieutenant Foster, Ryan said, breaking her train of thought. We need to send a message to High Command. Let them know the outcome of the battle. Warn them about the fallout. Emma nodded, pulling herself together. Understood, sir. What should we say? Tell them we've neutralized the immediate threat, Ryan replied, his tone measured. But also remind them that this won't end here. The galaxy knows what we're capable of now. There's no hiding anymore. Emma hesitated, then added, and what about the survivors? Any sign of Zorathian ships escaping? Ryan shook his head. If any did, they'll spread word of what happened here. The Zorathians won't forget this. Neither will the rest of the galaxy. Emma swallowed hard, the weight of his words sinking in. Humanity had taken a stand, but it came at a cost. The days ahead would be uncertain, fraught with challenges they couldn't yet predict. Still, as she typed out the message to High Command, she found a sliver of hope. Humanity had proven it could fight and win against impossible odds. Now, it was time to figure out how to use that strength wisely. Hours later, the Aegis limped through space, its battered hull a testament to the fierce battle it had endured. The crew worked tirelessly to repair the ship, their spirits bolstered by the knowledge that they had survived. On the bridge, Ryan gazed out at the stars, his thoughts drifting to the future. The galaxy had seen Earth's wrath. Now, it was up to humanity to decide whether to wield that power responsibly or risk becoming the very thing they had fought against.